dealer. Experience the Wilkie way at Wilkie Lexus in Haverford or visit wilkielexus.com.
I'm a veteran, and the Army taught me a lot about commitment, which I apply to my life and my work. At Comcast, we're committed to delivering the best experience possible by being on time every time. And if we're ever late, we'll give you an automatic $20 credit. My name is Antonio, and I'm a technician at Comcast. We're working to make things simple, easy, and awesome.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
All right, new this morning, a Russian state-appointed attorney for the U.S. citizen accused of spying in Russia says his client had classified information when he was arrested. There he is, Paul Whelan, his lawyer, again appointed by Russia, told CNN just before a pretrial hearing this morning where Whelan was denied bail. He claims that Whelan was found with a flash drive containing Russian state secrets when the American was detained last month in Moscow.
Here's the rub, and it sounds borrowed from a spy novel, because Whelan's attorney says that his client was unaware of the classified information, that he believed the drive contained vacation photos instead. Was this a plant? Joining us now, live from Moscow, is Frederick Pleitgen. He's CNN's senior international correspondent. So this is quite a story here, Fred, as to what's behind this. I mean, is his lawyer in effect claiming that this was planted on Whelan to justify his being arrested?
Well, I think the lawyer so far isn't going that far. I think that he did sort of insinuate that perhaps Paul Whelan was misled by whichever individual gave him this flash drive. It's quite interesting because it was given to him inside his hotel here in Moscow. And we asked the attorney who this person was who gave it to him, and he simply wouldn't elaborate on that, whether this was an acquaintance, whether this was someone else. He did seem to say that this was not a member of any sort of service in Russia. Now, another interesting facet to this case, I actually asked the lawyer as well whether or not Paul Whelan was going to have a fair trial in Russia, and the lawyer said that so far he believed everything was being done professionally, but then he did also admit that so far the defense has only been able to see about 5% of the material in this case. That obviously includes evidence and any sort of other things that's related to this case. This was, of course, guys, the first time that we were able to see Paul Whelan since his arrest in late December. He was standing behind bulletproof glass in sort of a cell inside the courtroom. I tried to ask him how he was being treated inside Russian detention. He wasn't able to answer that question. He wasn't allowed to answer that question. It was quite a high security court there. It was interesting because the judge came in. He read his decision saying that there would be no bail granted to Paul Whelan. There was no explanation. We weren't even allowed to film the judge as he was saying this. So Paul Whelan, obviously this is a setback for him. It wasn't necessarily one that was unexpected. His lawyer was saying that in cases like this, especially involving espionage, they usually force people to stay in jail rather than grant them bail, guys.
Goodness, you do not want to be in a Moscow court accused of spying.
No.
With a court-appointed lawyer there. Fred Pleitgen, thanks very much. Did President Trump just signal that trade talks with China are not going well? In a tweet, he points to China's slowing growth and tells the country to, quote, stop playing around and make a real deal.
Yeah, and it's a really critical time as both sides have now reached the halfway point of that 90-day extension to make a deal. If there is no deal by then, China will be slapped with hundreds and hundreds of millions of additional tariffs from the United States. Our business reporter Hadass Gold is live in stunning Davos, Switzerland. You are at the World Economic Forum, which is really important because that is where all of the key business leaders are gathered right now. What is the sense there? I mean, do they believe, because all their corporations rely on the U.S. and China striking a deal, do they believe one is close, or are they worried?
Yeah, Poppy, last year at Davos, there was a bigger sense of optimism. This is when Donald Trump was here. The markets were doing great. This year, I have to say, the mood here is a little bit darker. There's a bit more hand-wringing, and a lot of that has to do with China. Nearly every panel I've been to, a lot of the interviews we're seeing with a lot of business leaders and government leaders and academics, they're talking about China. Not only the fears of the trade war, but also this new data that just came out yesterday on a slowing economic growth for China. This is something that Trump mentioned in that tweet. It's the slowest growth they've seen since 1990. But there is also a sense, almost a little bit of a relief that it could have been worse. Maybe it's not going to be so bad. You do hear some optimism from business leaders who say that they do think that a trade deal will be struck. We have seen some reports that there might be some progress on that. Christina Arleschi, our own CNN correspondent, has reported that there are going to be some senior meetings with the trade delegation, probably even next week, and perhaps we'll see some news out of that. There is a large Chinese delegation here. This is something that the president of the WEF even mentioned in his opening remarks, and you feel their presence here. They're on a lot of panels. I was in a panel earlier today where one Chinese executive said that right now the Chinese are very confused about what's going on with the trade war. They warn that there's going to be less investment abroad. And actually, a recent survey of Chinese CEOs by PricewaterhouseCoopers showed that in just 1 year, last year, Chinese CEOs said the United States, 60% of them said the U.S. was a very important foreign market to them. This year, they said that's only 17% of Chinese CEOs say that the U.S. is an important foreign market to them. That just shows you how much is changing, how much this trade deal matters to the people here.
Yeah.
Of course, the U.S. delegation not there. That trip canceled after the president canceled Nancy Pelosi's trip to Afghanistan. Hadas Gold, thanks very much. Coming up this hour, a CNN exclusive report, an internal memo at Uber shows that the company is handling some very serious allegations of misconduct. Hundreds of claims per week, in fact, including sexual assaults and even deaths.
The best part about being a bath fitter installer is the reveal. Homeowners greet us in the morning and